Hello, duckies and dice fiends. Welcome back to the Chaotic Wholesome presents Table Talk Show. I am Kay. I am one of your co-hosts, but I'm not alone here. So, David, who the heck is you, and what the heck is we doing here?
Hi, I am David, and this is the Chaotic Wu-Tang is for the kids wholesome Table Talk Tuesday show, where every week we talk about TTRPG stuff, how to be a better player, how to be a better GM, how to be a better human being, how to be a better member of the Wu-Tang Clan, all with a focus on intersectionality and inclusivity so that everybody can have a good time.
And, as always, you can find us here and other places doing stuff. This week, actually, a little bit quiet. I'm playing some stuff that y'all don't get to know about yet. Real sorry. But normally I'm in the circus game on Wednesdays. Circus game is not happening this week. So you can find me here on Thursday playing Miniko's Night Market. Y'all, I've been waiting forever for this game to come out. I have been following this game since just about Ooblets, just about my involvement in Ooblets, and it's finally out. And we're going to play it on Thursday. David, do you know what you're playing on Friday?
Before you asked me that question, yes, I knew, and now I've had a complete brain fart about it. Brain will spin and process, and then I will come up with something. But the answer is yes, somewhere in my brain. I know what I'm playing, but anyway.
Yeah. I too have heard, Ribbonanza, that Miniko's Night Market has some challenges on the Switch. I'm playing it on Game Pass because I still have some Game Pass. So I'm going to check it out there. I was going to buy it on Switch, and then I read those problems, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna play it on Game Pass and wait for the Switch to be nice and ironed out. Sunday next week. Last week had to be canceled. Everything. Is it me, David? Am I the curse? Everything I'm in has been canceling lately. The first episode of Girl by Moonlight, season 2 of Chrono Bloom, did not happen last Sunday, but it will happen this Sunday. So go by Taverna on YouTube, and I will be playing Kinley, the time-traveling Bembo, who is supposed to save the day. We'll see what happens. And then we'll be right back here next week. Hey, crew, welcome.
Hey, looks like the thing works.
Okay, did you see it? So yep. we are doing a new thing. I have an incredible friend, Mr. Live Producer, who I play in the circus game with, who has custom built us a special code for StreamerBot so that our shout outs work on accounts that we follow. It was a little bit borked, so Mallory, yours should have popped up before, but it didn't because we were having some backend issues. I think it's working. We're double checking. But thank you, Mr. Live Producer. I know he also coded, if you look in the redeems below, it's below on a lot of places unless you're watching a mobile, then I don't know. The Pathfinder Assemble Your Party, he also coded just for us. I know a bunch of his codes are going to be available on his Ko-fi or his pages. He's incredible. If you were looking for stuff for games, he is awesome. And, okay, is that going to work? It should. Oh, I don't think the redeem is on your StreamerBot yet because I spent so much time. Okay. Sorry, Ribbonanza. We will find a way to redeem your codes. There's a way to redeem your channel points, and Mr. Live Producer can also do that. Sorry, it is not live yet. We will get it. It's fun running 2 versions of the same software on 2 different machines. We are also live, both on Twitch and on YouTube. Twitch now allows multi-streaming, and we managed to pull it off, I think. So if you are watching us either place, amazing. Twitch has a few more features, but we really appreciate any traffic follows that you can give our YouTube channel because we are getting ever closer to monetizing, and that's just exciting. I swear we're done with promos now. Thank you for hanging out with us. Yes. Ribbonanza is first, and we are excited that you are first, Ribbonanza. So, whew. Oh, also, hey, Domo Came, how you doing, Jason? So, also, for those of you who are in the know, there are some super secret, not tweeted. David is fighting with learning a new language, that language being coding streams that are happening almost every day of the week. So thank you to those of you who have been hanging out and keeping my bestie company, because he likes to do this while I'm at work. So it's really difficult for me to keep him company. So we are talking today about player motivations and involvement, because sometimes it's a challenge to get certain players or characters involved, and sometimes that is a responsibility of the GM. Sometimes I'm going to be a little bit spicy here and say sometimes that's the responsibility of the player. And we're going to talk about which is which and how to impact a bunch of that. So when David and I, when I say there are times it is the responsibility of the players at certain points, by and large, now look, it is by and large your job to build a character, or at least find a way to keep your character wanting to be involved in the story. With the right table, with the right people, with the right group, it can be incredibly entertaining to have like difficult characters or characters who are dragging their feet. But it's actually pretty challenging to do that right in a way that remains entertaining after a couple weeks, a couple months, certainly a couple years. And especially at the beginning of a campaign or for a one-shot, especially if it is a streamed one-shot or a one-shot for charity. Build a character that's going to go along with the adventure. When David and I build one-shots, when we build charity games, we will tell you, and then we will operate under the assumption that your character is going to go along with the party for whatever reason. I don't care if they grumble about doing it. When I played the Neurovarden charity game recently, my character was like, I want money. I'm here to get paid. And, oh, thank you for the resubscribe, JD Lady. 16 months. And when the NPC said, well, we don't know yet how much we'll pay, like, ooh, money. Well, we'll be happy to pay you, but we first need to know, like, you need to go talk to these people. It's like, all right, I'll go along and make sure that they pay us well, right? You have to go along with whatever's going on, because it would have been a very different game had the NPC said, well, I don't know how much you'll be paid. I'm just telling you where there's a job to collect. I said, well, if I don't know how much is being paid, I'm not going.
Right.
Don't be that person. Or if you're going to be that person who comes equipped with another player and another character who you've already talked this through with, who will be like, we're best friends, or I'm your keeper, or I'm your big sibling, and I'm going to pick you up and carry you. You're going because I'm going. That is also fine and fun. But come on, folks. That early on, it is your job to go along with the story.
And anybody who has like sat in on a zero session with us, and anybody who's played a game with me, one of the first things we say is, hey, your character wants to be here. You figure that out. If your character doesn't want to be here, then either think of a different reason or bring a different character. And I double dog dare any person to come to my, and to have the rogue that's sitting in the corner going, I don't wanna, because guess what? The adventure gonna move along without them. Yeah. I'd be like, cool, these 4 people get together, we off doing, and every so often I'm going to be like, and your dude is still sitting in a corner drinking. And like the rest of us will be off like having an adventure, talking to NPCs, like stabbing gelatinous cubes, getting stabbed by gelatinous cubes, making out with gelatinous cubes like it's a Mass Effect game, and you will still be sitting in the corner. Mm-hmm. And at some point, I'm going to be like, so you go roll another character, or like what's your plan? You're welcome to sit and watch us have a good time. Look, we don't kink shame. If you're a voyeur and you just want to watch, that's okay. That's why we have a Twitch channel.
At a certain point, if it gets weird enough, it might be like, cool, so we've now used a magical spell to teleport to the other side of the planet, and there's no way you're going to catch back up. So maybe you should leave the call.
Right. And like, I'm not going to be like, and then your character gets knifed in an alley, roll a new character, which, you know, as tempting as that might be, I'm not going to do. But also, like, you, the player, have to want to be here, and your character has to want to be here just as much as you as the player want to be here. Yes. I roll active perception to continue watching.
Yes, without a clairvoyance spell. Yes, Rivedon says maybe adventurers should unionize, form a guild for consistent rates.
Funny, I feel like, why is my combined chat not working? That's weird. I'll figure that out later. I probably broke something.
We have upgraded a number of things all at once, and sometimes when you upgrade like 4 things, 2 of them work. And you're not sure about the 3rd. And did the 4th ever actually work? That's kind of where we are. So, you know, that's how that is. So yeah, early on, beginning of the game, and again, unless you have worked it out, because look, there is something fun about the character who doesn't want to go along. There is a fun thing of like, if you all got to watch the job one shot that I ran, where David's character very specifically did not want to do this thing and was being forced to do this thing by the Thieves Guild. That was worked out, and there was consent given across the board for the beefy tiefling muscle woman to just pick David up and carry his character along, and everyone was down for it. It is very different if it's like, if you were like the sneaksy rogue who's like, I don't want to go along, and I'm not going to, and you can't make me, and you can't, unless you can promise me an obscene amount of gold that none of you have access to, I'm not doing it. That very quickly stops being fun.
Yeah.
So if you're playing that character, work with your GM. Like, again, you can do it, but you have to work out that there is a motivation. And again, at one point in a certain Starfinder game, gee, I wonder which one that could be, like, I very deliberately and very clearly had my character say, like, I think this group is going to be done with me and I'm going to have to break off from them real quick. Can you help me get out of town? And then and I had talked to my GM about, this is not, before I said that, I told my GM, this is not going to happen, but this is where the character is mentally. You and I both know it's not going to happen. I'm telling you right now. We finished that game. And then I told everyone at the party, I'm like, I am not going to make you beg my jerk character to stay. GM and I have guardrails. Don't make people work extra hard to keep your not terribly fun character in the party.
And a good piece of life advice, because we give that to you too, is if it feels like you're pulling teeth to be with someone or to talk to someone, then don't. Go do literally anything else.
Yes.
Go elsewhere. Yes. Because if people aren't given as good as they're getting, if people aren't, and to be clear, there are some people where you just won't hear from them until you reach out first. Like, because I am that guy, I was conditioned from an early age that no one wants to hear from me. But like, if you are with them, or if you're talking to them and they're engaged and they're focused and, like, you know, they're connecting, they're great. But if even after reaching out, you feel like you're like pulling teeth and everything's super dry, like, just don't.
I was going to say walking away is a free action, but it's technically a movement action. But
Right.
it's a movement action that does not require anything else. Just walk away.
Yeah,
there are people,
there's no skill check there.
Yeah, there are people who will take so much more than they give. And look, relationships across the board, platonic, romantic, familial, whatever they are, there are times when you will give more than you receive. But ideally, that also means there are times when you will receive more than you give. There are people who will just take and take and take and take and take and take and take. And you don't have to stick around. And again, people change. Rarely quickly, rarely for the better, but people do change. And if you realize this person that used to give and take in equal amounts is now giving 10% and taking 90%, and our friendship is not what it was, walk away. Rex, welcome. Disengage is a free action in life, if not in a game. Rex, thank you for hanging out. Thank you for the resubscription. I hope your move has gone well. But yes, don't make people fight to keep you there. If that is a thing you have set up beforehand and everyone is entertained by the joke, great, do it. But also check in and make sure people are still entertained by the joke, because 2 years into a campaign, if your character is still threatened to walk away after every encounter, I don't know if it's still funny. It might be. It might be freaking hilarious.
And we know people who are funny enough to pull that off.
Absolutely.
I am not.
And let's also be fair. It's not just the person who pulls it off. It's the table.
Right.
It takes everyone at the table to be that funny. I have the My Little Pony game on my brain because I just finished editing it. It is now, both parts are now live on YouTube. You can watch Candace the Magnificent, who's hanging out in chat, perform musical numbers, including Whose Flank Has Your Snoot Been Under? And Journey. Journey, journey, journey. Yeah. Dance, DM Jazzy Hands' character was so funny. But part of the reason he was so funny was that everyone was ready to be in on the joke. Right? And then Dance trying to make Glitter laugh was so funny. But it was even more funny because he'd fail to make Glitter laugh. And then he'd look at Journey, Candace's character, and go like, did I get her? We'll get her. Don't you worry. We'll get her. So I would argue, actually, outside of the very beginning of you show up to a brand new game or a one-shot, it is by and large your responsibility as a player to make sure that your character wants to go on this journey, wants to go on the adventure. After that, the party is a major influence on if players stay involved. Because yes, as a GM, I can throw a lot of stuff at you, but it's the table chemistry that really gets people going.
And like another important thing, and I immediately think of Godplane, is you have to be willing to touch stuff. You have to be willing and eager to interact with the content that is given to you, because TTRPGs aren't like one of those like Japanese buffets where the things on the treadmills go by and then you just sit there and wait until something you like and then you pull it off. It's not like that, because if you treat it like that, then all this stuff is going to go by and you're still going to be hungry. And then you're going to be like, well, why didn't the GM feed me? And it's like, well,
and that ties in very nicely. What I'm saying about table dynamics too, of like, if you only care, if you're sitting there and you're like, that bit of plot is intended for this other character and I don't care, and that bit of plot is intended for that other character, I don't care. As a player, be as invested in the other characters at the table and their stories as you are in your own. And I'm not saying you have to love every single character that you play with. There are some tables that I've been at where I'm like, these two characters freaking rock. This one doesn't do that much for me. But I'm still going to be interested in the party, and I'm still going to encourage everyone, including the less interesting one, because again, just because that story doesn't appeal to you doesn't mean it's not a good story. Doesn't mean it's not meaningful. Doesn't mean it doesn't need to be told. It's just not a thing that resonates with you. And guess what? Not everything has to be for you. And let me just be very clear. Sometimes some of those stories are not resonating because they are a little offensive or a little not cool or a little enabling a system like the patriarchy or, various things that don't resonate with you because you're dealing with that IRL. And that is a different kind of issue than, okay, I'm going to do a Critical Role reference. I just don't dig Keyleth that much. Because don't get me wrong, Keyleth was not my favorite character. Bo, I love Bo. Marisha Ray as Bo or as... It's not Lydia. Why is my brain gone to Lydia? What is Marisha's character in campaign 3? Laudna. Love me some spooky Laudna. Love me some Bo. Keyleth didn't do it for me. And that's not to say that Keyleth's a bad character. It's not to say Marisha Ray is not. Marisha Ray is great. Just didn't do it for me. That is a very different thing from I don't enjoy the first campaign of Critical Role as much because it is still very steeped in tropes, which I find uncomfortable, problematic, or boring. Two completely different things. So do keep that in mind. So yes.
And
be a fan. We often say, as a GM, be a fan of your players. As a player, be a fan of your fellow players. And love the other players, love their characters.
There's an asterisk there because there are different, like, I'm not going to say stereotypes, but like archetypes of TTRPG players. They're the loud, boisterous agents of chaos, like Kay and I. And the way Kay and I deal with that, if we're both in the same game, is Kay is a general agent of chaos, and I am an agent of chaos for Kay. Now that does like overflow to the rest of the party, much to their chagrin, but I've both run tables and been at tables where there's like the one person who sits there and then like chimes in every so often. And a lot of times it's like tough to like get your character going with that person, or it's tough as a GM to be like, well, are they having a good time? They haven't, like, it's a 3-hour session and they haven't said anything in 2 hours and 53 minutes. And then they're like, I roll for initiative. And you're like, okay, well, I'm glad there's a pulse there. But like, that's why it's important to talk to the people, not just interact with the players. Because I've said to people, I'm like, okay, listen, I put this plot hook out here and are you okay? Are you? And they're like, I'm having the time of my life. And I'm like, great, fantastic.
Yeah.
And they could just as easily be like, and I've said to other players, I'm like, look, I'm really like beaten up on this character, and I'm not really talking to your character much, but that's because I don't have like, and they're like, it's fine.
Yeah. And again, that can be challenging as a player because I think everyone who's dealt with me is used to my going, oh, this is going on. This character drags into the spotlight. What do you think? Especially if I've got a very boisterous character, because I know I'll fill all the space you give me, y'all. And I try not to be a main character syndrome person, but I know I'm prone to it. And then I drag them into the spotlight and they're like, I don't have an opinion. Are you mad at me? So yes, talk to people. And there have literally been times where I've been like, hey, I feel like this thing. And people have been like, that's great. I've had where I've been like, this thing. Someone, they wouldn't have done that back then. That wouldn't work for our backstory.
Right.
But I love the idea. Can we change it? So, but we talk about communication here a lot. So much can be solved with communication. Don't shut down lines of communication. Now, as much as we talk a lot about, really, it is, to a large extent, your job as a player to stay engaged. There are reasons that might not be happening. For example, a great example is sometimes, especially in longer campaigns, you are not jiving with the character you created anymore. You created this character when you were at a certain place in your life, and something dramatically has changed. Or you created this character to be very edgy, and then something terrible happened, right? life is bad. Like genocides happen, loved ones die, best friends move to the other side of the country, and you just might not be jiving with the character the way you used to. And so you might, like, you as a player might be disengaging because you can't play that character the way you used to. And that is fine. Again, communicate with your GM because maybe it's time to say that character doesn't want to be with the party anymore. And they're going to go off and do their own thing. And now you get to bring in a new character that's going to better fit where you are. That is no shame and no problem. The place, I believe, where it really does become at least somewhat the responsibility of the GM to work with the player and super make sure that the player and the character are invested is if you have dropped a major change, info dump, surprise twist on a player or character. So, for example, David and I are kind of known for making you think the world is one way, and then you realize, oh no, like if you've been going along, you're like, oh yeah, we're like Robin Hood characters, we're robbing from the rich and giving to the poor, and then all of a sudden it's revealed, well, actually, all of the families that you've been targeted, you were sent to by this mastermind. These are all families that weren't actually that wealthy, were maintaining by the slightest bit of dignity, and now everyone that you have robbed is now poor and indebted, and everyone knows that they have more money and they are ashamed, and that might make you feel real bad. Player and character. If you did a whole thing and then it turns out that the character that's been pursuing you all and screwing you over and is actually the twin sister that you thought was dead. Okay, maybe you need to spend some time as a GM to check in with that character and that player and make sure they're okay. That is when it is the responsibility of the GM to make sure the player or the character is still invested.
And like we've talked about before, like someone has a familiar that's a tabby cat, a tabby cat named, like, let's see, we don't use human names, food names. So like a tabby cat named Biscuit or something.
Is it an American biscuit?
Yes. Why would wait? Look, there's still tea floating in the harbor that represents my opinion of the British. Okay. And I understand that was like rich people slap fighting with rich people while being racist at the same time. Like, there's a lot to deconstruct from the Boston Tea Party, and the more you deconstruct it, the like weirder and more offensive and more hilarious it gets. And
I have asked multiple British people if they use biscuits on their browsers, if they have tracking biscuits, and none of them will answer me.
It's because none of them want to cop to it. They definitely have. The next time your friend from Telltale shows up, I'm going to be like, oh man, there are biscuits tracking your browser history.
If you ever play with Pan.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
There may be in the Emergency Power Podcast Discord, there is an entire channel called Biscord because there was an American versus British thing that exploded.
Ginger Biscuit, my next derpy familiar. Yeah, like if someone was like, this is my pet kitty from when I was a kid, and I was holding this cat when I got isekai'd while crossing the road, and I went to the new world and gained superpowers, but poor kitty didn't, then maybe just, and I understand that that's like a deep, nerdy, super nerdy reference, but like, then you as a GM, one, should like be aware of that, and two, should talk to your player before you're like, hey, so when the wizard said, I don't care how big the room is, I cast fireball, the only thing that got hit, luckily the only thing that got burnt to a crisp, was the representation of your beloved family pet that you found in the furnace one day on accident. Like, maybe like unleashing horror and trauma on your players in an unintended and involuntary way is a bad idea.
And also, I have found as a GM or as a player, if you reach out to a player ahead of time and go like, hey, so I was waiting for that. Well done, Vivian. I was waiting for that. I'm so happy you destroyed my co-host. So in a particular Girl by Moonlight game, gee, which one could that be? My character's from the future, and we knew the future was kind of dark and bleak. And I, in my mind, had the idea that one of the characters from this has died in the future, and that was part of what caused my character to become the freedom fighter that they are. And so I reached out to one of the other players who, for reasons, had two characters in the game for reasons. And I was like, hey, so knowing that this is the future and it is not what we're playing out in the game, right? Like, are you okay if I say particular things happen in the future? And I listed off a couple potential things, one of which being one of these characters has died. And like, I listed off a couple things so it wasn't super obvious. And the player's like, go for it. Right. And again, because I'm a character from the future, so I know things that haven't happened yet, the way I and also this is the character who just talks like and just goes off and there's really no, like I get lost in what my character is saying. I confuse myself playing this character.
Wow.
And so I've gone to everyone I play with this character. I'm like, hey, I'll say, I will, if you consent, obviously, I will say things like, oh, you taught me that, or oh, you said this, or oh, you did that, right? And if you don't like what I said, if you don't want that, if you don't think that's in character, if you don't want that attributed to you, just say, that doesn't sound like me. And I will 100% go, oh, must be confused, right? So long as you're communicating, people are generally down for like, yeah, let's put that in the backstory. Yeah, I'm down with saying that might happen in the future. Like people are down for it so long as you give them a heads up. Because if you come to me and say like, hey, Kay, we're going to do a whole thing where potentially in the future, like we're going to come back and say everyone in the future is dead. And I'm like, cool. That sounds fun. If you come to me and say like, hey, we're going to do a thing where everyone in your life has dementia. I'm going to be like, so maybe not, because for me personally, that's a little bit of a lot, and I don't want to deal with that in a game. But if you want to say they're dead, I'm fine. So just talk.
I mean, you might, if you do that to Kay, you might get a glitter bomb minus the glitter from somebody that is not Kay. And for Steve, my FBI agent who observes all of my online content, 1, hi, 2, this is that is not a threat nor an implication of any illegal
nor a promise.
Nor a promise. I did not say it's not a guarantee, but I don't do anything illegal anymore, Steve, I swear.
So yes, and again, as a GM, sometimes there's a great line that I stole, that a great idea, concept, way of thinking, way of planning a game that I stole from Brennan Lee Mulligan. And Brennan, of course, Brennan runs shorter campaigns that he has to pull together incredibly quickly. And I don't know how many I watched Dimension 20, but that content's pretty heckin' engaging. Like, I'm real mad that it's only Monday because I don't have a new episode of Burrows In to watch. And I know that is an Abria GM and not, but Brennan's a good GM. And Brennan, like, builds out the basics of the world, tells everyone what the season's going to be, gives them the tone. And then he says he sits back and waits. And he sees the characters people bring him. And he's like, if no one has a cleric or a paladin, I'm not building out a whole complex god system. But the line that was so great is he's like, I can build the coolest, creepiest, most intriguing NPC and stick him in a tavern. And the players inevitably will walk in and go, okay, tell me about that guy. Like, will not interact with the NPC that he spent forever building. But somewhere in one of those player backstories is probably an uncle or an ex-neighbor or an ex-lover who did something terrible to someone in the party. And if that person is in the tavern, you absolutely know everyone's going to interact with that. So again, and we spoke about a couple episodes ago, we spoke about knives. And I love the concept. I love this of bring in characters who have knives. And by knives, we're not talking about.
We're talking orphans.
I have knives, right? And I'm going to stab you with them. They are knives in your back. They are pain points. They are knives. They are things that prick your character. And at any given time, the GM can twist them and know it's going to get a reaction. So build in, be kind to your GM. Your GM is creating, even if they're not creating, they have learned an entire world. They are running it for you. They are prepping. They are doing voices. And again, some GMs are better than others, and some GMs do more work than others. And even those who don't do a lot of work probably have a lot of talent to make these worlds feel alive and interesting. They are weaving a story by the seat of their pants for you. So if they bring up your uncle or your missing sibling or whatever, don't just go, eh.
And two things. One, remember that anything that you recognize as talent is just practiced performance. Like, there are very, 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 very exceedingly few people that can do blank, whatever blank is, without any prior preparation or practice. When you see Brennan Lee Mulligan being Brennan Lee Mulligan, that man has been an actor and an improv artist for, I think, decades now.
That man was not only an actor and improv artist, he was an actor and improv artist at a LARP day camp for children. So he had to project his voice of, all right, hear ye, all night. If there is an emergency, exit out the sign over ye old there.
I did not know that.
Uh-huh.
And my second point is, the other thing that Brennan Lee Mulligan said that I think about all the time is laws or threats made by the dominant socioeconomic ethnic group in a given nation. It's just a promise of violence that's enacted by police, and police are just an occupying army. You know what I mean? Yeah. That always resonates with me.
If spoiler alert, if you watch much Dimension 20, capitalism is always the bad guy. It's either capitalism or the church, which is probably why I really like Dimension 20.
I mean, they say fiction mirrors real life. And if you pay attention, the villain is probably capitalism or the church.
Yeah. But, a lot of TTRPGs don't get that right. A lot of TTRPGs, the monarch, the king is the good force. Again, it's part of why Campaign 1 on Critical Role, it's like, It's like, oh yeah, the government is good. Cops are good.
And this is slightly off topic, but I understand that anybody who catches me in a room and observes me long enough will hear me rail about the government or the armed enforcers that they employ, or just, and I want to be clear. Any system that gets large enough is going to have bad actors. And bad actors have the tools and are willing to use the tools mercilessly, relentlessly to achieve their goals. But that does not mean, and remember that every system is just people. It's all people working together. But you have to always keep in mind that no matter what system, there are always people who are A, trying to do good, and B, for better or worse, believe that they are doing good. So a monarch, a Justicar, and that's part of why I end up writing a lot of paladin NPCs. is because the intersection of faith and morality and like perceived morality and intrinsic morality and whether they believe they're doing something right versus whether they're actually doing something right, and then them having the moment of they have to ask themselves the question. It's like, listen, my God tells me that orphans, fatherless children are evil, and I have to Anakin them into the next millennium. And then you're in, you know, the Jedi Academy, and then there are all these toddlers around. Like there's this moment of like, is my God doing a good? Am I doing a good in service of my God? Those children know what they did. And so like while it's important to, like, you know, infuse certain concepts and for certain themes into your storytelling, whether it be your character or as a GM into your world, remember that nuance in all of these things is one, more realistic, and two, way more interesting. Because like the snively whiplash twirling mustache villain 99% of the time is not as interesting as the villain who has a point.
And again, the Captain America style bad guys, I mean, it's fine for a power fantasy, but like if you really want to get your players invested, not only do they think they're doing a good thing, maybe your party got half the message and your party is one foot in the cult of doing good things, but you know, we're not just saving the cat, we're also kicking the dog. And maybe that's a fun reveal. So, yes, have the knives. Give your GM things that they can use, because if you come in with like, this is a perfect character and they're like, okay, look, I'm not saying, David knows I'm a big fan. I am a big fan of having RPG characters, TTRPG characters who have family alive and who had at least a decently happy upbringing. Because not everyone has to be tread. Look, don't get me wrong. I love me an edgelord. I have some of the edgiest characters you will see. Soul is an edge monarch to the core. But then there's Brandon. Brandon's parents love him. And that's great, because every so often we need those characters. There are ways to have interesting things and knives beyond someone brutally murdered my entire family. And let's be honest, the character who's got a decently complex story is more interesting than everyone I ever loved is dead.
Right. And like, so for one, don't show up to my table with dead parents, because why would you deprive me of the opportunity to kill your parents? Two, if you're going to go the route of like everyone I've ever loved is dead, then pull a Wolverine. Have them adopt a pseudo offspring. Like like in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is a cop show. Don't get me started. I understand the conflict of interest there, but there's a character who's played by the sweetest lady in the world. Like, you hear her speak, and I forget the character's name, but at one point she has a dog and she's holding the dog, and she's this hard ass. But then at one point she says, "I've had this dog for about 6 hours. If anything were to happen, this dog, everyone in this room is going. You're all gonna, yeah, Rosa Diaz." You're all gonna die. No one's gonna make it. This dog is my baby now. And like I think that could be a really like interesting approach to like, oh, I'm an edgelord and like blah 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 blah. Is like, you know, and the reality is it is part of the human condition to see yourself reflected in others and to be drawn to people who reflect who you are. That's why everybody at anime conventions all like stink together is because they're like, oh, we're birds of a feather. We will flock together, and this entire auditorium will need to be like deloused. Um, like, it's why there are conventions, is so that people who have similar interests can get together and be nerds about their similar interests. And there are more types of conventions out there than you might think. There are librarian conventions, and those are big deals.
There are, as we learned from an amazing person chat, knitting conventions.
Right.
That's so cool. Actually, fiber conventions are actually really cool. I don't know if you've ever seen fibers like taken from raw and then like cleaned, dyed, and spun. It's really actually cool. It's a really cool process. Like the fiber arts is a fascinating thing.
Unfortunately, I did that in high school, but it was a punishment. And I was like, huh. This sure seems like really suspect vintage labor. There's something in me that is squeaking pretty loud about this, but it was fine.
Yeah, that was the fun when whatever two venture capitalists bought knitting.com for like
Oh yeah.
hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was like, we're gonna fund everything. And they're like, what do you know about the fiber arts? They're like, the what?
Yep. Oh man, that is a great piece of like, if you don't know, like, go dig it up. It's hilarious.
It's so good.
It is one of the best what do they call it? Like niche community drama. There's like a phrase for it. But it's so good. It's so satisfying.
It was delightful because these two incredibly white dudes just got completely schooled. They were like, knitting's not just for grandmothers anymore. And the entirety of the armed forces are like, we knit.
Right.
We have a lot of downtime and we knit. That's what we do. And they're like, no, you don't. It's like, but so build a character again. And I'm sure it seems like I'm putting a lot of it's the GM's job to keep the game entertaining. It is. Don't get me wrong. GMs can do a very boring game. I have also played in games where I'm like, I am not a fan of this GM. It's not a great game, but I'm having so much fun role playing with these people. I'm having so much fun with other people at the table because GMs, yes, can do incredible things. But if you as a player have a character who wants to be there, the rest of your party has characters who want to be there, you all have a same pace, you have an understanding, you have a sense of humor, you have whatever you have that you're sharing. If you are fans of the other people and you get a good thing going and you have ways to build off each other's ideas, because here's the thing. The most memorable things that I have done as a GM for my players came because a player said something and I went, yep, and I'm just going to massage that right on into the story I had before. And here you go. Here's what you suggested with what I already had planned. And now it's even better. And people get so excited when you take their backstory, when you take a thing that they built or worked on or loved and are already passionate about and give it to them in a slightly different form than they expected. It's great. It's really fun.
I was going to make the analogy that it's the GM's job to open the door and for you to walk through it. But it's more apropos to say it is the GM's job to build the house and it's your job to figure out how to get in.
Well, and to decorate it.
Yeah. Because, maybe you dive bomb through a window. Maybe you Kool-Aid man through the wall. Maybe you dig a tunnel. But, in an almost literal sense, the world is your oyster. The world that the GM builds is a sandbox for you to do stuff in. There are GMs who make little sandboxes and GMs who make narrow sandboxes, but it's still your job to play in all the sand that's in there and put penguins in them.
And put penguins. Yeah, sanguines are very important. And there are definitely GMs who, especially there are certain brands of GMs that are usually a certain type of neurospicy, and especially types of GMs who run modules where the sandbox isn't that sandboxy. It's pretty straight. You can still have a lot of fun within those, but also usually, and again, because a lot of times, and it all comes back to communication, which we keep harping on, but really, we're playing at games with words in our imagination. So using your words in and out of character and listening to words that are being said to you are very important.
Right.
You know, I have seen people interacting with these GMs who are very much like, the module says X, so we are doing X. And then people are like, hey, do me a favor. Like I'm worried that we are lost. I don't know if there's gonna be more, but do me a favor. And if it's not as much, right? If it seems like we're not getting anywhere, give us more hints, because we want to solve this. We don't want to spend too long on it. Like, we're worried about how this is going. Just talk to us, right? And give us more if we don't seem to be getting it. And every time the GM's like, oh, okay. Like, it's not, I won't say every time, because I'm sure there are GMs who will not do that, who are like, well, the book says you should be able to figure it out. And if you don't figure it out, then we're not going forward. But by and large, it's often the GM's going like, oh, it almost, those types tend to think of this as like the pop-up. Well, I've been watching a lot of Stephen Joy's who playing Puzzle, and Stephen is Puzzle. And like the game will pop up and be like, do you want a hint? And he's like, no, go away. I do not want a hint. So a lot of times GMs are like, well, I put out hints. And it's like, well, the box went away before we could click. Please give me another hint. They would just be like, hint, please. What can I, and you can do it in character, but often out of character, just going like, hey, before the next session or before we start this session, we're not figuring it out. Can you please just give us a little bit more? And usually people are really happy to do that when you say that. Unless it's Stephanie and the door is not locked, and the whole point was to keep messing with the puzzle until we failed so that she could just show you that the door was unlocked, which my character thought was hilarious.
And, like, I had a point, and then Stephanie, and then it's gone. But,
hints. But talk to your GM.
Yeah, and conversely, like, for anyone who's seen The Good Place, at one point, what's his name with the bow tie? I'm terrible with names, and I never remember character names. Michael is like, oh man, it's so great that you picked up those 8 points that added up to this out of the 7,000 points that I left out there. Like, and I remember what I was going to say. Like, but like, as a GM, it's your job to like scatter a bunch of like bullshit for people to figure out. And then also, it's your job to go with the flow. Like, if people come up with a really interesting, fascinating solution to a problem, like, we literally had a thing, and then someone was like, well, I eat it. And we're like, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to do that. No one told you to do that. And they're like, well, too bad I did it. And we're like, okay, well, we got to figure it out now.
Right? That was fun. And also, as a GM, and look, there are ways to do this that's scummy and not fun. But as a GM, especially for major character moments, we had a scene in a game where it was a major moment for this character. It was a spotlight on the character, and a decision had to be made that was. And so I'm like, you're in this situation, your best friend is in major trouble, you have to do something. What do you do? And literally my GM notes in brackets in all caps said, I don't know what the fuck he's going to do, but I guess we're going to find out. I had no idea how he was going to solve that. And however he did it was the right way. And that's what was important about that, is however he did it, because this was focus on his character. Don't sit around with everything and go like, well, there's not a solution. I'll let them figure it out. Have solutions, have different ways for people to get to a solution. But if someone comes up with a really cool idea, roll with it. Again, I was editing the My Little Ponies game, and Candace was coming up with some just, and again, a little bit of that was constrained by the module itself. Spoiler alert, if you haven't watched it or haven't read, or you're going to play the My Little Pony Stealing Thunder adventure, and you don't want it, like, just do this, and then I'll give you a thumbs up when you're ready to come back. But just in the race, spoiler alert, take it off if you don't want to know. In the race with Spitfire, you actually, the player's rules as written, cannot impact Spitfire herself. Cannot slow her down. Like, this will happen in X number of rounds, no matter what the players do. But my players were so creative, between Candace and Eugenio especially, but the other two also were great. But Candace and Eugenio especially just pulled out the stops with cool stuff to do to mess up this character. It reached the point where I'm like, I'm giving them an extra round because this is so good. I'm not going to not. Okay, we're done. If you can come back. Spoilers are over. But like, I was watching some of the things Candace was doing, and like, I'd be like, well, no, I think that would have to be a this, not the thing you're suggesting. And then I was like, God, Kay, that's lame. That's not cool, Kay. And then 2 seconds later, Past Kay was like, actually, no, I'm cool with that. Let's go. And I'm like, thank you, Past Kay. Reward your players. Make your players feel cool, especially if they're doing clever. I'm into it. David has a thought. Is it going to become an outside thought?
It was a food-related thought, so no.
Oh.
Because apparently David is hungry today. But that is neither here nor there. But, it's gone. That's the... Look, if you tuned into the programming stream earlier, there was a whole lot of like, nothing's here, nothing is working, and that is the kind of day it is.
It has been an entire week, and it's only Tuesday.
Yeah. I went to bed at 6 p.m. yesterday, like 6:01. I was like, I'm done here.
And yes, Mallory, I loved every second of that game too, and I'm so lucky that I got to play with such great people.
Oh, I remember. So, a little peek behind the screen is David will come up with problems, with puzzles, with obstacles, and have no idea what the solution is. I have even come up with riddles, and I'm not going to say which ones, because I try to use riddles very rarely, but I've come up with riddles where I'm like, I don't know what the answer to that is. And then I just sit back and wait for the very smart people to figure it out for me. And then somebody will be like, it's this. And I'm like, no, it isn't. And that's the real criminal thing, is I don't know what the answer is, and I'll look at somebody dead in the eye and be like, no, that's the wrong answer. And then somebody else will be like, what about this? And I'm like, that's the right answer. Ha ha, you got it wrong. But I'm also a bad person. Maybe don't do that to your players. But
David's also a liar as a GM. David and I will be like, before a game, David will be like, oh, there's going to be no combat today. And everyone will look at me and I'm like, David will boldface lie to the players.
I mean, listen, you got to keep them on their toes. But as a player, like, don't, again, this is a game of interaction and collaboration, so don't be afraid to throw your head against a thing, because you never know what the answer might be. And Kay and I have talked about this both on and off stream before, about like the language of video games, about someone who's never played a video game before, got stuck in a room in Ocarina of Time, and everybody's going, look, you just grab the stick, you take the fire from here, and then you light the brazier, and then the door opens. And the person playing it looks over, is like, what the hell are you talking about? No door has ever been unlocked by lighting a fire. You have a key, and you put it in, and like there's no door handle, there's no key. And we're like, you're not wrong.
I handed my Switch to a Gen Zer who had never played retro video games. And I gave him Minute, MINIT. If you have not played it, it's an incredible game. It is a masterpiece of level design. You die every 60 seconds, and you have to advance the story as you go. It is 2-bit, it is black and white, it is brilliant. I handed this Gen Zer my Switch with this 2-bit pixel art game, and he's like, I can't leave this screen. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't leave the screen? He's like, it won't let me move. And he's like using the thumbstick to move around. And I'm like, just go up. And he's like, I can't go up. The screen isn't moving. He did not understand the concept that if there's a break in the wall, you can walk. That's an exit. You can walk through it. He expected the screen to move with him. And because the screen wasn't moving, he took that as I am boxed in. There's an entire language of different, and again, this is part of why we talk a lot about, I struggle a little bit with rules light, because I'm like, I want to know where the barriers are, because I'm going to go bang my head against them. And I find that really fun. And if there are no barriers, then it's really hard for me to know what I can and can't do. I'm not trying to break things. I just need to know where things are so I can know what's breakable and what's not.
And it's important to remember that Matt Mercer, the legend of Matt Mercer, ripped up an entire encounter on screen and threw it in the garbage.
Multiple pages, too.
Because his players outwitted him.
He's done that. He did that, too. He had an entire character sheet, and then a firebug lit the pit that this character was in on fire. And he's like, well, rip. Bye, NPC.
And Control-A delete doesn't have the same impact as ripping up multiple sheets of paper. However, Kay and I have done it together. Kay and I have done it on our own. Like, we've all, and like, don't be afraid to throw a wrench into the GM's plans. And that doesn't mean like don't purposely sabotage the game, because purposely sabotaging the game is the equivalent of being the rogue that sits in the corner and is like, I'm not going.
Yeah. It is purposeful. It is fine and fun to purposefully derail a thing and be like, we're going to have some fun right now. But like, maybe not when it's someone else's backstory spotlight thing. Maybe not when it's the big, huge emotional moment. But of course, I don't know if y'all have watched the recent Mighty Nine live play. Y'all, I miss the Mighty Nine. I love them so much. But like, they open a door and there's a magic mouth that starts talking at them in the voice of a jerk face that they all hate. And this thing is monologuing and giving them important info that they need to continue the quest, but it's the monologue of someone they hate. And Bo's like, I closed the door. The entire audience cheers and laughs, and there's kind of a pause, and another character's like, we might need that info. And she's like, yeah. And she opens the door. Matt's like, the voice continues.
Kay and I have concocted a villain where if you closed the door to the room where he was monologuing and then opened it again, he would still be going.
Oh yeah. Candace has met that one.
I'm not going to say anything about a magic mouth. The end.
It is a spell in 5e. That's all I'm saying.
It's going to be in my next campaign.
There's magic, a whole oh god, I know too much about the fan fictions and the fan created spells for various D&D campaigns, and pretty much everyone agrees that there's the grease trap spell. Everyone agrees there's a different grease spell that's a cantrip.
No. Second edition?
Oh, it doesn't. It only exists in fan fiction. Do you really have to think this hard about it?
No, because like I swear that in second edition we used a grease spell.
There is a grease spell, but there is a different grease spell.
Oh, oh,
In
oh,
fan fiction, that is a
oh,
cantrip.
oh. Nah, I'm gonna make that a level 3 spell. That'll encourage your studies. And listen, there are gonna be a whole lot of like 15-year-old male wizards that are like level 9 wizards because they had to get that level 3 slot, okay? And Candace, to answer that question as soon as possible.
So, as we are reaching the end of our time together this particular evening, do y'all have any great stories of how a GM really pulled you into a game? One thing, another topic I'd love to revisit later, David Tilstra, friend of the channel, the incredible David Tilstra, did a tweet about like, GMs, where do you start your campaigns? I keep starting mine in a prison. And I'm like, that's a great place to
Well,
start.
well, okay, you've started in a jail in a campaign that I
have.
have run.
I have.
And I thought it was funny that Tilstra was like, we start in a prison. And I was just like, I've probably the number 2 most started spot in all of my games is a jail. But also, there's going to be a spate of shipwrecks. That's going to
Shipwrecks are
happen.
fun. So that's the most fun and creative ways to. I think I've told this story before, and I'm not going to do it now. But chat, if you have anything really cool that a GM has done to really pull you into the campaign, pull your interest, keep you involved, shout it out now so we can read them off. But again, my favorite starting of a campaign goes to a game that Cato played in, where it was a funeral. And everyone, the party met at a funeral. And it was the funeral of a bard. And a whole group of half whatevers were sitting around the table after the funeral. And they're like, so who are you to the deceased? Oh, he was my dad. What? He's my dad. No, he's my dad. The entire party were half siblings from the horny bard.
Papa was a Rolling Stone. Woof.
Mallory says, I think a lot of the times I start players in their own spaces and have them all convene into one place. It gives everyone a second to be introduced and we all start together. That is fun. It gives a little bit of character flashback. David knows I like to start people in the thick of things. Like, look at the first scene of Godplane.
Yeah, it's like you wake up after a hard night of drinking in a room, in a place that isn't even a room, and no one speaks your language because you're still drunk. And then someone else has a hangover and shuts you up.
Vasal doesn't need a hangover to be a bench.
It's true. But I feel like Vasal always, I feel like Vasal is one of those people that always has at least a little bit of a headache, like behind one eye.
Yeah. I'd have 2 people start in a void surrounded by burning debris together one other time.
Yeah, but what were they drinking? Because I want some. Because it sounds like a David night out. Like sunrise hits and it's like, I don't know how I got into this void. I don't know why things are on fire, but the lift bill is going to be incredible.
But yes, so again, communicate. As a player, when, and again, this is Kay's. We're going to do a quick countdown of Kay's rules of what are your responsibility for player involvement as a player in a TTRPG. Your character should either want to be there or have enough reason to be there and take part in the adventure. Don't make me drag you before I know you into this adventure. Just do the thing. Be a fan of the other players and characters. And as David said, touch stuff even if it's not your own. Poke buttons, pick up on things, interact with stuff, because it's TTRPGs. Things often interweave together in ways that are not obvious.
Yeah, and like if you knock the sonic rings out of a bandit, and you see that there's a silver sonic ring instead of a gold sonic, pick it up. I need you to pick it up. You got to reach out and touch it. You worked real hard to knock the sonic rings out of this man. Now run his pockets.
If you are no longer engaged, if you as a player find yourself disengaging with the game, figure out why. It might be a playstyle thing. It might be the circumstances in your life have changed, so you're not necessarily resonating with that character anymore, and there's ways to change and fix that. If you are not resonating with the game because there's various reasons that this could happen. The game itself is just not jiving with your style. You are not getting the hints you need. You are not getting the roleplay you need. Whatever is going on, figure it out. If it works, talk to your GM. And if your GM can't or won't fix it, remember, disengaging is a free action.
Yeah.
Walk the heck away. Because if you're not having fun, there's other places you can go to have fun.
Yeah, and I think we don't talk about it enough that you could like consent means always being able to say no. Consent means always being able to withdraw consent at any point. And that if you're not having a good time, even if it's with your friends, you don't have to be there.
I have told this story before, and I will tell it again because it's shameful, but it's also very funny and very entertaining. Baby K didn't know they were ace. Baby K was in a long-term relationship with the first boyfriend Baby K had ever had. Didn't want to be in the relationship with said boyfriend anymore, and didn't know how to break it off because nothing truly bad had happened, and Baby K didn't understand that I just don't want to be in this relationship anymore was enough of a reason to walk away. I'm just not having fun is a good enough reason to walk away.
Absolutely. 110%.
Disengaging is a free action. If people taken more than they give, maybe it's time to disengage. Maybe have talk first. And if they're like, well, this is all I have to give, and I will continue to take, and I will take more in the future, maybe then disengagement is the free action. It's not a free action in combat, but it is in TTRPGs. If, again, one of the biggest responsibilities of a GM is if you have dropped a major bomb, if you have done something incredibly disruptive or traumatic to the party, check in with your players, make sure they're still engaged, make sure, especially if some major stuff happened, be it through events or through dice rolls, your party's paladin has broken their oath. Work with your player. Work with them. Figure that out. That is partially your responsibility. There's a topic we almost spoke about today because I saw a tweet that I found really, really my heart, but it could seem subtweety about something else, and so I didn't want to do that topic just yet. But she was like, my character is a druid and was given the gift of a familiar, and my familiar died. And I can't figure out how to get it back. And my GM was like, I don't have find familiar because I'm a druid. It's not on my spell list. And my GM, I've done all the things. I've been to 3 different libraries. I prayed at the church, and I get nothing. And I don't know how to get my familiar back. And I don't know. And I'm like, I feel like your GM's trying to do a plot thing. But if you're not figuring out what the plot thing, maybe talk to your GM. And GMs, if your player comes to you and says, this thing is really important to me and or my character, can I get it? Like, okay, look. I stopped keeping up with Critical Role Campaign 3 because I forget if it was 3. There was almost a TPK that was entirely the party's fault. And not all but and 3 or 4 characters, I guess it is all but because there's 3 or 4 characters died, dead, gone. And in past games, when a character is gone. And now, of course, that was the decision of the player. And there were rituals done in some that brought people back, and it was very awesome and meaningful and great. And that was great. But they managed to get every single one of them back. And I was like, this no longer feels real or engaging or dangerous to me. Right? I also, again, I love the actors of Critical Role. I love the stories. Campaign 3 just didn't click with me. And that's fine. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it didn't click with me, right? So I was like, oh, like my brain was already going, oh, well, if we are getting 3 to 4 brand new characters, maybe this campaign will excite me now. And then it was all the same characters. And I'm like, well, maybe this is where I check out. Still super happy for Critical Role to be doing great. Not watching it right now.
Fresh cut grass is still fight on sight. Like, if I catch him slipping out in these streets, we're going to tangle ass, okay?
You'll have to deal with his flesh tongue.
Man, why? What? See what I mean? He's getting these hands. Absolutely not.
There are some excellent reasons to pretend your internet went out midstream. But
and like, there are different views on plot armor. Kay and I both subscribe to you are in danger. Like, you're going on an adventure and you might not make it. There might not be a happy ending to this story. And depending on what game you're playing in with us, there definitely isn't going to be a happy ending. And depending on what game you play with us, if you fail, there will be a happy ending. So like
when we played Ponies, Tank was not in the room with the Nightmare Shade and the Shadow Bolts because I was not putting Tank in danger.
But like, different people have different opinions, and it also, like, what you want from a game matters. And so if you're like, hey, I'm looking for a dungeon crawl, Kay and I's table may not be what you're looking for. Like, if I just want to sit down and roll dice and crunch numbers and do a bunch of math, then go to MIT, go to Stanford. They have great math departments. Don't bring that here. Don't bring that nonsense here. Wu-Tang is for the children. Mathematics is not.
Ashley Johnson showed up to the live play with a calculator so that she could because she plays a barbarian. So she's like, I'm rolling a ton of dice and it's a lot of pressure and I'm just going to punch all these numbers into a calculator. And I'm like, yes,
yeah,
great. Do that. Zero shame, zero judgment. I wish I was that smart.
And you know, sometimes you want to play and you want to be a hero and you want the power of fantasy. I mean, like, I play video games where, like, you are the chosen one. And I read books where you are the chosen one. That's fine. There's no wrong way to approach that. We just have a different and better approach. Of course, I'm going to think it's a better approach. But we have a different approach to it. And, like, yeah, you got to have some skin in the game. Like, when the dice roll, the teeth got to be chattering. Yep. And when you get those death saving throws, I'm hoping for a 1.
And even when we played the My Little Pony game, the coziest game, the anxiety of Eugenio's rolls of, am I going to get to the finish line before Spitfire? Like, Eugenio was back in his chair, almost tipping over. No. So even in the cozy, silly games, you got to be invested. And so again, when I say talk to your players, if losing a pet, like, okay, I'm going back to Dimension 20 in A Crown of Candy. A character loses a companion animal, and it made them pick an entirely different subclass. And, like, it resonated through the whole character. They didn't have to have that pet come back. They just had to figure out how to move forward. But maybe, Crown of Candy is basically a Game of Thrones, so it was brutal. The pet was not coming back, right? Like, that was part of the risk you took. But in a more cozy game, again, I'm not saying take all of the risk away, but find work with your players to find ways so that they will feel satisfied and come back, because sometimes.
And as a player, remember that some of the best stories are told, some of the best character moments, off of bad rolls, off of failures, off of things going wrong.
So, and when in doubt, GMs, if you can't figure out how to get a player involved or to get a player excited or a character more involved, number one, talk to your player, because maybe they're just the like, I'm going to sit back and be very quiet until it's my turn and I'm having a great time, but I don't want the spotlight more than I have to have it. Like, that is totally fine. There are those players. And if that is not, if that's not the case, if they're, look in their backstory, find something fun. And again, players, put stuff in the backstory that the GM can grab. Again, I have been shamed more than once for having really long character backstories. And part of the reason they're really long is that I want to have hooks. I want to have hooks that the GM can just be like, because more than once I've had a GM go like, I'm like, okay, cool, the story's about to conclude, la da 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 da. Oh, that's from my backstory. Oh, and it feels so good when you had completely forgotten about that detail, but the GM didn't. Give your GM the space to surprise you with that. Whole season was truly amazing. How failure and work between GMs and players talks could make them seem invested. Zach Oyama was phenomenal. Yes. If you have not watched A Crown of Candy is one of my favorite actual play TTRPGs out there. It's so freaking good. It's Game of Thrones. There's lots of betrayal, lots of death, but they're also all candy people, which just makes it. Zach Oyama plays a Cadbury bunny, a chocolate bunny. It's great. So with that, I think we are coming to the end of this. Again, Circus Game is not happening tomorrow. That normally happens every Wednesday. I'm playing Miniko's Night Market tomorrow. David, did you remember what you're playing on Friday?
I remember that I was, so at the end of my stream on Friday, I had to sit and stare and process, and that is still happening.
David beat Slay the Princess.
And
has feels.
Yeah. And so that processing will continue, so it's going to be a game time decision.
So I'm playing Miniko's Night Market Thursday. David's playing something on Friday. Sunday, over at Tavernon's channel, I will be playing Chrono Bloom Girl by Moonlight Game Season 2. It will be the first episode of Season 2 because this one was delayed. And we'll be right back here Tuesday. We got some other stuff going on, but we can't talk about it just yet. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. You always make our chats so much more delightful. We got Xander playing some Wind Waker, unless y'all can think of someone else we should raid.
Yeah, we're going to raid some.
We're going to raid some Xander.
Yeah, unless someone else weighs in, we're going to raid some Xander.
Righty. Well, if you have another suggestion, shout it out now. We are going to flip to the ending screen.
Xander starts with
a X. I can do it. Thank you, Jason. That's so sweet.
Boop.
So, have an excellent one. Thank you for spending your evening with us. I hope to see you at some stream between now and then, and if not, we'll see you right back here next week. Be kind to yourself, be excellent to others, and we'll see y'all next time.